you can choose to boycott Israel and be in Arkansas. Just, we're not going to do business with you at that point.
Here I am now. It's queer springtime.
A federal judge in Virginia sentenced former Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort to prison for 3 years and 11 months. A jury had found him guilty in August for 8 charges related to financial fraud. The special counsel also indicted Manafort on charges of witness tampering and conspiracy in a D.C. court. He's pleaded guilty to those charges. That sentencing happens next week.
To count 1, we find a defendant guilty of manslaughter while armed with a firearm.
Newman Raja is the first police officer in Florida to be convicted of an on-duty shooting in 30 years. Prosecutors say he was in plain clothes and didn't identify himself properly when he approached Corey Jones. He had a permit to carry a gun, and prosecutors say Jones pulled it because he thought he was being robbed. Raja's attorneys say he did identify himself and feared for his life. In his latest rollback of an Obama-era rule, President Trump will no longer require the Defense Department to report the number of people killed in drone strikes, including civilians. Obama's order only applied to strikes against terrorists outside of war zones, but the current administration refused to reveal those numbers anyway. Philadelphia is the first city in the U.S. to force stores to take cash, a blow to companies developing cashierless checkouts or ways to pay by phone. The city council wants to prevent discrimination against low-income residents. 1 in 5 don't have access to either credit or bank accounts. With the touch of a royal finger, removed only briefly from a black glove, the Queen of England posted her first Instagram, only she didn't make her own profile or take the photo. Using just one of a handful of official royal accounts, she shared pictures from an archive that aren't exactly influencer material. But she still looked rather pleased.
Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down! If we don't get it, shut it down!
Today marks the 6th straight day of demonstrations in Sacramento, following last Saturday's announcement by the local DA that the police officers who shot Stephon Clark 7 times a year ago would not be prosecuted.
Clearly, we all know he didn't have a gun. But those officers at that moment in time clearly did what he died.
People weren't surprised the DA declined to prosecute. A Sacramento Bee report found that since 2015, DA Schubert has reviewed 33 police shootings and hasn't prosecuted any of them. But Schubert also brought up Clark's previous arrest for domestic assault, suggested he may have been suicidal, and said the autopsy found drugs in his system. And that really set people off.
They talking about make America great again. You gonna show it to my cousin Steph for make America great again, huh? Yeah, how about that? We gonna burn America, bro. We gonna fuck this shit up, bro. How about that?
Now, we expected T.A. Schubert to come through and not convict the officers. But what we did not expect for D.A. Schubert to come through and convict Stephon Clark of his own murder.
Say Stephon Clark! Stephon Clark!
When Sacramento's under attack!
After the DA's announcement, protesters marched through one of the richest neighborhoods in Sacramento.
Move forward at a half step. Prepare to make arrests.
The next day, California's Attorney General, who had conducted his own investigation, said that he wouldn't be prosecuting the officers either.
I'm here to announce today that our investigation has concluded that no criminal charges against the officers involved in the shooting can be sustained.
And he doubled down on the idea that it was reasonable to inquire into Clark's past.
You always, in any investigation, you always try to go backwards as well so you can understand what happened at the time of the incident and then moving forward.
Is that what you're telling the community, is that, this may look inappropriate, this may look like an assassination of character, but this is just what we do?
I'm not sure how to respond to that, because if we were to have to engage in an investigation in the future where loved ones die and we only look at the facts of the incident moving forward, but never look back at what the perpetrators were doing before, I think we'd get crucified.
That night, protesters confronted city officials at a council meeting.
1 year. 1 year to conduct a fair investigation. 1 year to reimagine policing and how you would conduct yourselves when you interact with the community. Drop the charges, fire the officers. Drop the charges, fire the officers. Drop the charges, fire the officers.
They want to talk about Stephon Clark? Right? Let me tell you like this motherfucker don't give a fuck about Stephon Clark. He got a motherfucking shut the fuck up. I'm gonna keep on talking. I'm gonna pay less attention. Jack off! Jack off! Jack off! Jack off!
Even with state and local criminal charges off the table, demonstrations are continuing. Protesters are now pushing for the officers who shot Clark to be fired.
This is the area, the community, the neighborhood, right, where Stephon Clark was killed. Right, his grandma's.
Barry Axius is a community activist who's been involved with the Clark protests since the beginning.
You want the 2 officers who shot Stephon Clark fired. This is what protesters.
They gotta go.
Who could do that?
City manager, Chief Hunt. DA, we knew that wasn't gonna happen. AG, we knew that's not gonna happen. But Chief Hunt, there's still a glimmer of hope. If we do get that, we show the world the blueprint, how to get an officer fired.
Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down!
If you don't get that hope,
Oh,
if the 2 officers aren't fired. I mean, you're connected to the community. You know the protesters.
Family, let me tell you something.
What's gonna happen?
Let me tell you something, man. What Sacramento is seeing is just a bit of what could happen.
Power to the people! Power to the people! Power to the people!
The House voted today to condemn anti-Semitism, discrimination against Muslims, and other bigotry.
The resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Though it didn't name her, the resolution is a rebuke to freshman Democrat Ilhan Omar. A Somali-American congresswoman from Minnesota, Omar's criticized Israel and its influence, giving voice to long-simmering concerns on the left. But in the process, she stumbled into anti-Semitic tropes, stereotypes of Jews as money-obsessed, manipulative, and disloyal.
Do you think that Ilhan Omar understands why her comments were problematic, and what happens if this happens again?
Thank you for the question. I don't think that that the Congresswoman is perhaps appreciate the full weight of how it was heard by other people, although I don't believe it was intended in any anti-Semitic way. But the fact is, if that's how it was interpreted, we have to remove all doubt.
Pelosi and other mainstream Democrats view support for Israel as sacrosanct. But there's a block of progressives who are standing up for Omar. They say a dialogue about Israel's right-wing leadership should not be off limits. Republicans are expected to keep putting Democratic support for Israel on trial. One way they'll do it, by pushing anti-BDS laws.
She continues to display anti-Semitic remarks, comments. These are her beliefs.
BDS stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanction. It's a consumer boycott of Israeli-made products. It's designed to punish the country for its treatment of Palestinians.
Free Palestine!
Israel calls the campaign anti-Semitic. So far, 26 states have passed anti-BDS laws, which force anyone who does business with the government to pledge not to participate in the movement. One of them is Arkansas. Alan Leverett founded the Arkansas Times 45 years ago.
It's been my life's work. I decided when I was 22, I wanted to devote my life to Arkansas. I wanted to make Arkansas a better place to live.
The Times is Arkansas's left-leaning magazine. It's free. The publication survives on ad revenue. But this revenue stream is being threatened by a 2017 law that says state contractors have to sign a loyalty pledge to Israel.
Could you explain to me from the beginning how that happened?
One of our biggest advertisers and oldest advertisers is University of Arkansas, Pulaski Technical College. And so in November, the marketing people who we've worked with for years said, the purchasing director is requiring us to get you to sign this. And at first I just sort of lost it. And but this time it just kept coming. And finally I said, well, there's not going to be a signed pledge. See if I can find her.
The college buys ads in his paper with state money, making Leverett a state contractor.
You refused to sign it?
Yeah.
And what did that cost you?
Well, so far about $15,000. And it could get worse.
Y'all all should tell Alan that you think the printing job looks like shit.
We've been running a break-even proposition, sometimes not even a break-even proposition in some years. So $15,000 that's somebody's job.
Despite the cost, Arkansas Times employees support his decision to fight the law.
Just simply to stifle dissent, and that's un-American and we think unconstitutional.
If you were to combine all of the revenue that you make from contracts with the state, how much would you stand to lose if
they— About 10%.
10%?
It's a lot of money.
So even though the paper doesn't participate in BDS, it and the ACLU sued the state over the law.
You say it's unconstitutional. Why?
Well, because it's a violation of freedom of speech. So we're going to let the state, whether it's the federal state or the state of Arkansas, influence a political position of a newspaper in return for money. Okay, is that a good idea?
It's hard to trace the origin of these anti-BDS laws, but they seem to be the result of coordination between lobby groups, some lawyers, and pro-Israel legislators like Bart Hester, State Senate Majority Leader, lifelong Republican, and dedicated Christian. He sponsored the Arkansas bill.
There are other states that have sponsored bills like this, and they're strikingly similar, almost word for word, like Texas, Louisiana, and I'm wondering basically who's behind authoring these bills.
No one came and pursued me to author this bill, but whenever you decide you're going to do it, you start researching what other states are doing, if it's working. You always, I like to check with groups like AIPAC, see what their thoughts are, and if they've got any what we call template legislation that seems to be working for them.
AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, is a powerful lobbying group that pushes pro-Israel policies in U.S. politics.
Did your Christian faith have an influence on the authorship of this bill or the sponsorship of this bill?
I think it absolutely did. Again, I hope that my Christian faith influences everything in my life. And I'm a believer in the Bible, so I absolutely believe the Jewish people are God's chosen people, and therefore I have a responsibility to benefit them where possible.
Foreign policy is largely the purview of the federal government. Why do you feel the need to enact legislation on the state level?
It's more than just the boundaries in the land in Israel, right? I believe that it expands to the Jewish people. When we see on a federal level when they're going to sanction Iran, right, they have the right to do that as a country. I think as a state, we felt like we had the right to make a statement as well.
But you're not sanctioning another country, you're sanctioning your own citizens.
Right, we are. We're sending a message that says, hey, we are not going to stand by in Arkansas and let people take our taxpayer money against something that our overwhelmingly amount of our taxpayers don't believe in. You can choose to boycott Israel and be in Arkansas. We're not taking away your First Amendment freedom of expression at all. Just we're not going to do business with you at that point.
If Hester wanted to talk to Arkansans about supporting Israel, he wouldn't have had to go far. The leader of Little Rock's Jewish community opposes BDS, but he's also against the legislation.
I am the rabbi of the largest Jewish congregation in Arkansas by a long shot. And I'd never heard from Senator Hester about this law and whether I thought that it was in the best interests of the Jewish people of Arkansas. This law has nothing to do with the Jewish people of Arkansas. I'm a vigorous opponent of BDS. And we, the American Jewish community and Israel supporters here in the United States, are successfully winning the battle against BDS. What we don't need is the power of the state to help us fight this battle. I'm grateful to the Arkansas Times for bringing the case. I think they're a great plaintiff because they don't engage in any boycott of Israel, and they're being forced to sign something that frankly a newspaper shouldn't be asked to sign. What this does is it gives the state a certain amount of control over the free press.
Okay, all right, thank you, Donnie. All right, bye-bye.
The Times has now gone 4 months without one of its biggest advertisers. In January, a federal judge threw out the Times lawsuit, saying boycotts aren't protected by the First Amendment. The paper is appealing. They're saying you got the freedom, you don't have to sign it.
Yeah, we just don't.
But if you choose not to sign it, you just can't do business with us.
Yeah,
That's
well,
all.
I'll tell you what, I'm a citizen, okay? I pay taxes in this state, and I this is my home. And no, they do not have a right to punish me for exercising my constitutional right to be silent. In this instance, it's just to be silent. We don't take a position on this. Our job is to write about Arkansas. We're a lot more interested in Medicaid expansion here in Arkansas than we are what's going on in Jerusalem.
Is there a tipping point where you recognize if you don't sign these pro-Israel pledges that your publication is going to sink?
Could be.
And would you be willing to sign it then?
I don't know. I've got responsibilities, and I've got responsibilities to these people here at this organization. I'm not looking to be a martyr, but I am willing to appeal and go through this process and let this go on for the next year. And I'm gonna do the best I can, is all I can say.
Tony Evers rode November's blue wave into the Wisconsin governor's mansion, barely beating Republican Scott Walker.
So folks, let's polka tonight and get to work tomorrow. Thank you.
But that blue wave didn't really affect the makeup of the state legislature, which is decidedly Republican. During the lame duck session, the Republican legislature passed a bunch of bills designed to make sure the new Democratic governor wouldn't have as much power as the old Republican governor did.
There are 17 ayes, 16 noes. The bill is passed.
That set the stage for an automatically adversarial relationship.
What have you learned about working in a predominantly Republican legislature and you being a Democratic governor?
Coming into the job, and I still believe it today as I sit here, that we can actually accomplish some things. You know, people are going to have to give, but I believe that can happen.
You have already vetoed the tax bill that came out of the legislature. How does that comport with actually getting anything done?
Well, that's a perfect example. Both sides believe that we should have a 10% cut for middle-class people in the state of Wisconsin. So we're all on the same page there. It's just how we pay for it. I believe the way that we have decided to pay for it is superior to what the Republicans have decided. You know, they're essentially using whatever surplus we have, and then when that surplus is gone, then that money would have to come from schools or healthcare or something else.
How do you think that your plan to pay for it is something that Republicans will actually go along with?
If it's part of the budget, and my proposal clearly is different than theirs, I think that's a reasonable place to do it. There's millions of dollars moving here and there. We could cobble something together. When it's done in a separate bill with no other parts of billions of dollars, it makes it difficult to reach an accommodation.
Do you have a Republican ally to help you figure out what that common ground is?
Oh, absolutely. I believe we'll find common ground with the legislative leadership.
They've already been pretty outspoken against you.
Of course they are, but it's all part of this game, this political game. Who's on first?
Do you think it's possible to get past that political game?
Partially, yes. I mean, there always will be that superficial discord and people jumping in, and we do it too.
Your priorities that you talked about during the campaign, things like $15 minimum wage, which you say you're still behind, trying to expand Medicaid, are those things that you need to tackle now, or is there a possibility you wait on that just to see if you can actually work with a conservative legislature?
Right, but as a part of the budget, I mean.
So you want to do all that in the budget?
Oh, absolutely.
Evers came into office essentially holding the bag on a massive deal his predecessor cut with high-tech manufacturer Foxconn. Walker had promised billions in state and local subsidies in return for Foxconn creating thousands of jobs. But just weeks after Evers took over, Foxconn hinted it would scale back its plans and create far fewer jobs. Republicans in the legislature immediately tried to blame Evers for the change.
Just tell me, where are we with the Foxconn deal right now?
Well,
explain it to me.
I thought the deal itself was a bad deal. financially was huge. It's a major impact on our economy. That aside, I understand it's part of state law. It's passed. Shovels are in the ground. Buildings are being built. My goals are several. One is to make sure the taxpayers in Wisconsin are protected, make sure that our environmental standards are upheld. And this is probably the most important thing, is that we make sure that the company itself, and I get it that they're a private company, and I get it that they have to make decisions based on the market and their analysis of that. The information from them has to be more consistent, more transparent. We need to have detailed plans of what they're going to do so that we're not caught by surprise every 2 weeks. Now that we're at this point where we know approximately what they're going to be making and all that.
What are they going to be making?
They're going to be making smaller things than they were making before, but it could change. But what I need as governor is to make sure that...
Wait, I'm sorry. You said it could change again?
It's changed before. It's changed thus far.
Do you still think they're going to create as many jobs as they said they would for the people of Wisconsin?
At this rate, no, but the job thing, they don't get paid unless they reach their goals.
Governor Evers introduced that 2-year budget proposal we talked about, and it was loaded with progressive initiatives like increasing the minimum wage, raising the gas tax, and capping school vouchers.
Believe it or not, this is not the Tony Evers budget. It's not the Democratic budget, the Speaker's budget, or the Republican budget. This is the people's budget.
Republicans immediately called it a liberal wish list.
And you said you are excited about working on these things over the next 4 years. How can you be excited about having to fight for the next 4 years? That's what you're going to be. It's going to be a political fight for 4 years.
Of course it is. But at the end of the day, that's what the heck I was elected to do. I mean, there's a reason.
You don't think you were elected to just try to figure out how to make a deal?
No. I was elected to make sure we have a better education system, better transportation system, better healthcare system. Of course, there's going to be political fighting. But at the end of the day, if we sit here together a year from now, we will have accomplished some things.
My name is Nakhane, and the song that you're speaking about today is called Interloper. When I wrote Interloper, I was as mad as a box of frogs. It's about the whole idea of being jealous of your partner's sexual partners before they met you, which is an insane thing. My favorite lyrics in the song are, "Who did you love in Bacchanalia? Do you think they would have loved you too?" So mean. So mean. And of course, the whole idea of Bacchanalia, which was a Roman festival where people would go and drink wine and fuck for a long, long time. The drum sound was inspired by 100 Years by The Cure. Very cavernous, very dark. I wanted drums. So like Kate Bush, drums, no hi-hats, no cymbals, nothing. And they have to move the base of your body, you know? They have to sort of like shake the bass chakra, the 8th one. The driving stem of the song is definitely the bass because it's so repetitive and it goes back and forth. And fun fact, actually, Ben Christopher, the man who produced the albums, refused to loop it. He could have played the 2 chords and looped them, but he actually played them live. And if you listen to it, you can hear certain differences in the intonation and the notes. The lyrics, I'm in love, I'm an interloper, I'm in love, I'm no interloper, are voices in my head, right? And so I wanted to sort of have that echo chamber, those loud voices in my head that only I can hear.
I'm in love, I'm an interloper. I'm in love, I'm no interloper.
I wanted to use a choir on the album in general because a lot of the album is about my childhood. Well, I was born into a Christianized family. I was, and the church, trying to quell my sexual desires and my identity. Obviously, it wasn't successful because here I am now. It's queer springtime. It's like sex because, you know, you sort of, it goes dun, 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 and then that's sort of the foreplay, and then it bounces in, and that's when you're getting into the repetition of sex. And it goes harder and harder and harder and harder, and then you come, and then you, by the end, you're holding each other. If the person wants to hold you.
The